And we all saw the iPad and went, oh yeah, that's what, now there may be changes in the iPad, there may be tweaks, it's going to get better, but anyone in this business who didn't look at the iPad and go, OMG, shame on you, because it was certainly pointing to the future in a very profound and important way. So the question is, what are the next big problems going to be, and how do we get involved in the conversations associated with these huge opportunities instead of being left outside of the conversation? And I think that's really the critical issue. How information professionals bring very, very important skill sets, but they need to be in the conversation, not excluded from the conversation. So what we thought might be a good way to do this is to pick a problem and then work our way through it as a suggestion as how information professionals might participate in analyzing and solving a big problem. So, of course, being idiosyncratic, I picked one of my problems, which is and a problem that is faced by a publication that's near and dear to my heart, The New Yorker. So I'm a New Yorker reader. I read it every week. I read it on my iPad. It's one of the best iPad applications. If you haven't looked at it, you should. It's elegant, it's beautiful, and it's honestly a more satisfying experience than the paper product. I was finally won over when I was reading. I don't normally read the poems in the New Yorker, but I was looking at one and it said, click here, and touch here, and I touched it, and the poet read the poem. Yeah. That's what I said. I said, I don't think I totally understand what this means yet. I need to think about it. But this is a big deal when the poet reads the poem. Yeah. So I'm reading the New Yorker, and I get to the book review, of course. Now, we made a mistake because in the written thing for this conference, we talked about music, and in 2 months, my whole view of music changed because I found out about Spotify, and I'll never buy another piece of music again because I have a jukebox with every song online. So we're on books now. And this mud woman looked really interesting. And so I'm an impulse book buyer now because they're typically under $10, and I can immediately download them to my iPad right now. So I read the review. Looked really interesting. I went to Amazon. I bought the book. There we go. That's so insidious, right? It's too easy. Now, I'm not reading more books, but I'm buying more books. And they're all in my iPad. And then I went back to reading The New Yorker again. Now, that's all very cool, except for one problem. I love The New Yorker. I believe in The New Yorker. The New Yorker didn't get anything in that transaction, okay? Zero. I read the review. They stimulated that purchase, okay? But they got zero. And it's not because technologically they couldn't, because there could have been a link. And there's a lot of talk at The New Yorker and Dow Jones and a lot of other places about the separation between church and state, editorial and commercial policy, and the fact that when you read a review and you buy a book, is it okay for The New Yorker to get $1? Frankly, I wish they would get $1 because I think that means we would have The New Yorker for a longer, and Dow Jones and the New York Times and everybody else. And if I read a theater review and I ordered a ticket and the New York Times got $1 or $2, that would be okay too. But a lot of wringing of hands. We've heard all day issues around revenue and open source and are the academic presses going to succeed? So this is a big problem. What models are needed to turn content into commerce in the 21st century? This is a big problem. It is the kind of problem I would suggest to you that iSchools could help a lot with. I would also suggest to you that iSchools, as part of research universities or big universities, are some of the few institutions in our society who can go after big problems as honest brokers with multidisciplinary approaches and, frankly, with resources. I know things are tough, but the 60 largest research universities have combined endowments of over $250 billion. Okay? There are no other institutions in our society of that kind of magnitude. $250 billion. And they're here to stay. Of the 85 institutions that existed in 1550 and still exist, British Parliament, Catholic Church, 70 of the 85 are universities. Long runway, here to stay, smart people, big endowments, but we can have a bigger impact. And whether it's information professionals or whether it's universities in general, there's a chance to have a bigger impact. So how do we do that? We believe that innovation and execution are really very important, but that the action is at the intersection between innovation and execution, and that takes entrepreneurial thinking. These crazy people who have short time horizons and who believe that you need to get things done immediately, and the fact that as important as innovation is, if you can't actually execute, pull it off on a minute-by-minute, day-to-day kind of thing, it's just a science fair project. So, and those of you who haven't had a look at Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, it's really it's a fabulous book. It's a fabulous biography, and it certainly is a testament to execution, relentless execution. I mean, the iPad is cool, but there were lots of variants on that. But the design was fabulous, the execution was fabulous, it actually works, and I think where we think the action is, and really one of the premises of our book, that this entrepreneurial thinking at the intersection between innovation and execution. So how do you get there, and how would you approach, let's say, the problem that we have, which is these revenue models? And I must tell you that if I got reinvented in another life, I would love to create an institute or something. I think you could fund it. I think it would be multidisciplinary, and it would focus on how you're going to create viable revenue models for information in the 21st century. And, you know, Condé Nast would pay for it, Hearst would pay for it, Dow Jones would put money into it, honest brokers, smartest people in the world trying to figure that out, because everybody's trying to figure it out. And I would suggest to you that that's an example where iSchools could play a huge role. So how do you get there? Well, first you open the tent. And you've heard about entrepreneurs in residence and professors of the practice, and it works. Getting different people for different disciplines together inside our tent has a huge impact. At UNC, we've got, I think, 20 of them running around all over the campus, and you don't know what's going to happen, but more good than bad happens. It's unpredictable. Sometimes they go off the reservation, but in general, more good than bad happens when you open the tent. And I think Syracuse is a perfect example of, I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen, but you're willing to take the risk of, it's not going to happen within your walls solely. It's going to only happen, nothing important, I've learned, really happens at these big universities unless it's multidisciplinary teams. It just doesn't, there's no payoff in any other way. So you've got to participate with others, but if you're going to go after big problems, not that the discipline itself isn't important, learning information skills isn't important, but then to apply them, you've got to be part of a multidisciplinary team. And that's where, in our view, where the real action is. The fact is that at research in large universities, the resources are unbelievable. So if you've got a problem, there's almost an unlimited number of people and expertise that you can assemble together to go after the problem. The question is, do you go after problems or do you advance a discipline? We believe that the discipline's important, but then you have to go after some really important problems. So here's an example. We've got sills, and if we're going to go after that problem that I was talking to you about just a minute ago, which is how these revenue models are going to work, we've got a lot of resources on our own campus that we could assemble together